Good evening, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. We have item 1.1. I don't imagine there's any conflicts of interest, but is there anything to declare? I don't see any. We'll note that in the minutes. We have adoption of the agenda. We have the one item. Is there anybody that cares to move the agenda? Councillor Holm? Okay, Councillor Holm moves the agenda. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And there's no other business, so we'll get to item 4.1, and we have Clayton Rutberg here. Welcome, Clayton.
Thank you. Since October 26th, the last time that the COVID update and stuff was brought to council by myself, cases have kind of continued to rise locally, provincially, and nationally. The Emergency Management Agency in Coaldale has done a number of communication pieces to attempt to get the message out there and educate the public. A few of the different things that we have been doing since the end of October includes some full-page ads that we've run in the Sunny South, which I think the first one just went in last week or the week before. We've done some increased social media posts, engaging with people through social media about COVID awareness, as well as messaging being displayed on any of our public-facing TVs in our facilities, so that as people are coming through, they get to see some of that extra messaging as well. We've also put up some signage on Main Street that's made its way around to a couple different spots on sandwich boards with some key messages such as maintaining social distancing and stuff like that. And a letter was also sent out through Cam Mills to all the businesses in Coaldale, offering kind of our support as well as some of that provincial signage. You know, if they want to make masks mandatory within their facility, that they have the signs and ability to do so, as well as offering to assist with any PPE requirements that they might have if people are having problems getting their hands on PPE. One thing that isn't in the report there that I just verified tonight is we also added the message on the signage on Highway 3 that was originally used to let people know that businesses were open during the Main Street construction. Spencer had that changed to reflect some COVID messaging as well as another method to get that out there. So again, we'll continue to monitor and facilitate that flow of information and making sure that people receive that critical information and those updates that come out from the province. But I do have two versions of the masking bylaws here tonight. One version is the one that we had the last time when Kaylin presented for me on October 26th. And another version is the version that was looked at by the MD of Tabor for their masking bylaw as well. So I have both of those bylaws here tonight because we wanted to have a couple different options for council should you wish to implement a actual mandatory masking bylaw. The biggest difference between the two, ours that was brought forth to council last time mimicked that of a lot of the other communities such as Lethbridge, where there is a education and enforcement piece, whereas the one that we have in here tonight from the MD of Tabor excludes the enforcement piece. So the recommendation would be that council approve the temporary face covering bylaw that excludes the ability for enforcement. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge that over the last 24 hours, the town has obviously posted about our special meeting with the agenda tonight, and we have, I just want to make it clear to people that we have received emails, we have read them. There's a number of emails that are strongly in favor of the mask bylaw, and there's a number of emails that are just as strongly against it. I believe every member of council's had an opportunity to read all those emails and that, and, you know, some for our, you know, state science and other sound reasoning, and some against use the same stuff as well. So this, obviously tonight is one of those nights when it's a divisive issue apparently in the community, and there, you know, there's people that are strongly on each side of the question, and, you know, there's other, I'm sure, like me, other members of council have had phone calls and text messages and, you know, other dialogues as well from residents and whatnot that, you know, either support or the bylaw or support not having one. You know, I've reached out to my colleagues, like Clayton was alluding to, you know, the other outlying areas, MD Tabor, the town of Tabor. I've been trying to do an email chain to the local levels of, you know, the municipalities in our area, you know, all the way to Bow Island, the Vulcan. So Bow Island and Vulcan, neither of those communities have a mass bylaw. Both of those have engaged, you know, with their business community and their residents, and are doing a lot of education pieces, and they're finding a lot of compliance with wearing masks without anything. And then, you know, the MD of Tabor and Tabor have put in mask bylaws, and Raymond, they haven't done a mask bylaw. They're, you know, working with the business community as well. Pitcher Butte, the mayor there, Kathy, is actually in quarantine right now, and so she's negative on her tests, but she and her council may be examining the bylaw, she said, or, you know, they're divided on that issue as well. So it's, and the town of Fort McLeod, they're not going down that road of a masking bylaw at this point in time. And I just heard Councillor Simpson report that the city of Medicine Hat just passed one bylaw. So there's a real hot patchwork of stuff out there. And so with that, I want to thank everybody for taking time to come and revisit this issue, and, you know, because the numbers are rising, and I want, you know, I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion. And, you know, we had a meeting of council, and, you know, the day after that meeting on the, you know, last council was 18th, and the day after was the 19th, and, you know, I kind of had a sense that, you know, the province might introduce measures that were along the lines of mandatory masking and that, you know, and they did kind of enforce it around Edmonton and Calgary areas, and Lethbridge as well. But so, you know, that's that, and you know, the province didn't do anything on the 19th that made it uniform across the province for a number of reasons. So here we are to discuss it tonight. So I'll open the floor for questions. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. One question and then a few comments. So if we do proceed with a bylaw, are we looking at providing businesses with masks, or is it something that we will expect the businesses to provide?
I think if there was a larger shortage or a business that maybe was unable to, we could help out a little bit, but I think more or less it would be expected on the businesses to provide.
Okay. And just kind of echoing some of the words that the mayor was saying, you know, I really respect all of the communication that we have had with the bylaw. You know, I do work in the health industry and see how it affects families. You know, where I'm employed, there was a few people that have died from COVID, and how it affects the families. And me wearing a mask, I respect you, so I would hope that somebody else could wear a mask and respect me. You know, I've got family members that are immunocompromised that, you know, can't go out in public because they will be around people that are not having masks. I appreciate the scientific data. You can Google doctor either way, positive or negative. But again, I was really hoping the province would step up with some more restrictions, but the restrictions made things more complicated than helpful, I find. Why would we have our children from grade 7 to 12 going to school, but yet anyone younger can still go to school? It just doesn't make sense. If we want to stop the spread, we're seeing astronomical numbers from the gatherings. People are not obeying the gatherings, they're not doing the social distancing, and we see that all the time. Today they've asked for the federal government to bring a field hospital into Alberta. That's telling us that deep down they know that these restrictions are not going to work. Ontario, actually, their health minister referred to Alberta, and if you want to see a mess, look at what Alberta is doing. So I believe we depended on the province didn't step it in, so we need to make sure we're protecting our residents, not depending on the province. So I'm speaking very much in favor of putting a mask bylaw in place for Coaldale.
Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I totally understand why there's such a push to make masks mandatory in a time such as where there is so much panic and confusion right now. We all feel very helpless and grasp at anything that might give us hope. There are many pros and cons with wearing masks and strong feelings on both sides. Some of the health side effects include higher levels of CO2 gases, breathing is shallower, causing back problems. Dentists are finding more cases of infection in mouths because people are breathing more through their mouth. Asthma patients find an increased aggravation, increased infection, as it can lead to concentration of the viruses in the nasal passages. There's less oxygen to the brain. It makes it hard for people that have breathing issues that are unable to wear a mask or go anywhere and not be judged. Coaldale has been quite peaceful about the issue, but laws can create hostility between wearers and those that choose not to or are unable to. A recent analysis reveals that 85% of patients testing positive wore masks more often. We made the decision to ask people to be informed and act responsibly, and I think this has been well received. And I think there's a reason why Alberta did not make it mandatory. It would have been a lot easier for all the rest of us, but there's obviously a reason that they didn't do that. And going to one of the letters that we got today, the fellow that wrote that in there and said that 3 of his family members, they were all wearing masks, doing everything that they had to do, supposed to do. All 3 of them got COVID. His wife, who is, her health-wise, she couldn't wear a mask, so she's living with these 3 people, and she didn't get COVID. So I'm really not sure that that's going to prevent any disease. So I would definitely be going in favor of item number 3, choice number 3.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Worship. And I echo an awful lot of what Councillor Avery says. Masks do make a difference. We wouldn't have surgeons been wearing masks for hundreds of years if they didn't work. I guess most, as Doreen says, or Councillor Lloyd says, it causes brain damage because there's lack of oxygen. Well, I guess we got a lot of very brain damaged medical staff out there, don't we? I think the science has spoken for itself. I think the science is very clear that a mask is just one of the tools in our tool belt to try and reduce the risk of this. If we look at the numbers in Canada, Alberta has exploded. All the rest of the provinces have put full mask bylaws in place for over 2 weeks now. If you look at Alberta's numbers 2.5 weeks ago, we were running at 15 to 19% of the total cases. We're now at 26 to 32%. By the way, we only have 11% of the population. We now have higher numbers with 11% of our population than Ontario and Quebec combined. Like, what is wrong with us not doing whatever we possibly can to reduce the risk? A mask isn't going to solve the problem by itself, but it certainly is one of the tools that's in our tool belt that is so simple. There isn't anybody in the world that can't put a mask on for a few minutes to walk into a grocery store and run back out, to go past somebody in the street. It's not like we're doing anything that's gonna hurt you in the long term. We've worn seat belts for years. Did we have pass a seatbelt law because it was going to stop all deaths from traffic accidents? No. We passed a seatbelt law because it reduces the risk. That's what this mask does. So I'm all in favor of a mask bylaw, and I also believe that we need to have the bylaw have enforcement, because we cannot allow citizens to go, na 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 na, I don't have to, because what are you going to do to me? I think if we're going to do it, we do it right. Thank you.
I did reach out to one of the business owners that probably has a lot of volume in their store in Coaldale, and you know is divided on this topic as probably all of us in this room here. You know, but he does find that there is a lot of compliance in the store with the people that are coming in, and that they have been taking measures to reduce the volume in the store, and those kind of responsible things. So I do want to tip my hat off to the local businesses and the citizens, because I do believe a lot of the people have listened to that adage that started back in March, it's in our hands kind of thing, when it started about washing and everything like that. But this is a situation where this person he's very as a business owner very torn, because the one thing that he is really nervous about is a bylaw, mandatory bylaw, where his staff might have to enforce it, where some person is taking the order and then has to be the enforcer of saying, Mr. or Mrs. or whatever, you need to, have a mask on kind of thing. And, that's really the reality of Coaldale, I think, because we don't have a platoon of people that can be at every retail and public location to step in and enforce these bylaws. And that's sort of unfair part of this stuff, and where you do kind of put the onus on people that are working to and their job position doesn't really shouldn't encompass enforcing bylaws. So it's a thorny issue, that's for sure. And I'm not trying to say anything disrespectful about whatever. I'm just trying to bring in other elements of the dialogue, because it some of the things that happen, a lot of people accuse us of not listening, and after tonight, regardless, there's going to be people that says we don't listen, because some of the people are going to have a result that they wanted, and some of the people aren't. But we do listen, and it's not it is not that we're not listening. We're listening to a lot of voices, and that it's hard to weigh all those considerations with and even in this room, very respectful dialogue on both sides of the issue. Councillor Pauls.
Hello. Item number 2 is, it doesn't have any kind of monetary. So is that a misprint, or is it for sure?
Sorry, I'm just going to look at the...
Respond, but that's it excludes the ability for enforcement and doesn't have any fine component in it.
Yeah, that's correct. That is number 2.
Okay, so with no money, or is it going to stay that way, or you're going to use it? Maybe, maybe not.
The only way that would change in that bylaw, it was written exactly the same as the MD of Tabor. The only way that would change is if council decided to put that aspect into it later on down the road.
Okay, and I'd like to find out who put Councillor Roger Holm on my computer saying It's all canceled. Did you see that?
That's probably not in
Uh,
this discussion.
I don't believe it, because it's a bunch of spelling stuff's wrong, but like, at first I just about fell off my chair. And my computer is doing weird shit all day, so. Thank
Just
you.
a friendly reminder that we are live streaming tonight. Councillor Simpson, are you?
Thank you, Your Worship. So there's medical evidence on both sides of it. The reasoning why masks don't work for the normal people, what they state, is because we're touching it all the time. So none of us are physicians. So yes, mask works in an operating room because they're not touching it. If I've seen my kids wear a mask, I've seen them touch it in the past 5 minutes at least a dozen times. So I wonder, for the people I know who have actually got COVID, they were actually the people the most strict with how they went out and how they proceeded with things. They wore a mask, they limited their exposure as much as they could, only shopped for the necessary items. And yet they still received it wearing masks. Do they work? Yes. But do they end up becoming a crutch? Yes. I go into one of the major stores in Lethbridge that has pushed for masks since day one. The first thing I notice every time, the employees there are complaining about the customers because somebody at some point complained about wearing a mask. They're sitting there in a group, 3 or more, complaining about the customers that I'm overhearing as a customer. Second is they walk by me within that 6 feet when there's more than enough room. I actually went past one of their employees to give him the 6 feet distance, and he says, no need for that. There is a need. Dr. Hinshaw and the Alberta government has set out the rules. Social distancing is not occurring. So is that our problem? Is these masks not allowing that social distancing? Because as soon as we put it on, we can think we can go right next to each other. That is my worry about a mask bylaw, because I've seen it happen in Lethbridge, and I've seen the arguments, and I've seen the fights, and I go online and I hear people complain about it constantly on both sides. So my worry is whether we go with 1 or 2, there is no enforcing of this. Just like in Lethbridge and everywhere else, there is no enforcing of this. Nobody has enough bylaw officers to sit at every single public place and every single store in this town. And it ends up being on the businesses' backs to support. And I was in a store where 2 people walked in with no masks. It was like a fight. Like I thought somebody was gonna start a fist fight. So what are we gonna cause in Lethbridge by making an unenforceable bylaw? We need to follow Dr. Hinshaw's advice. And her advice right now is not to make this a mask mandate bylaw for our area. So I'm gonna follow who I think is the most educated person in this field, and that is Dr. Hinshaw.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to everyone who's spoken tonight. And I also agree with our Chief Medical Officer of Health. I think that of anyone in Alberta, she has certainly the pulse of the province and understands the dynamics, both rural and urban, city and small city, and I think she wants the best for Alberta. I think to that I wanted to speak to Council about my thoughts, and I've spoken before about responsibility, and I'm speaking about individual responsibility because this is not about collective responsibility as it is individual. And whether we're for mask bylaw or against a mask bylaw, we need to be responsible for our behaviors and our actions. Really, even though it's a provincial jurisdictional matter, it's becoming on us to do the enforcement and the education side of it. I know that enforcement is really almost impossible, and I almost relate it to, having a driver's license, and, a police officer isn't gonna stop every vehicle on the highway to see whether whether they have a driver's license or not. But it's a matter that people in their own conscience will understand that I'm doing this for the good of my community or for my own self. I think the other thing is respect is the other thing I'm thinking of, and respect for one another has to be prevalent throughout. And of course, protest for or against really doesn't stop COVID from spreading. It really doesn't. Because COVID, obviously, as we know, has no boundaries. So now it's really up to Coaldale residents to comply, to be respectful, and follow protocols. It really saddens me that we're not ensuring that our own health and our own protocol is taken care of. We don't seem to want to reduce the curve, and our attitudes towards not wearing masks are really escalating unnecessarily. And I'm understanding from various sources that there are pressures on our healthcare system, particularly in the big cities, in Calgary and Edmonton. And yet, from a local's perspective, it's really quite interesting. Somebody emailed me about this today and said, you know what? It's interesting that people here in Coaldale will go to the city of Lethbridge and wear a mask there in the city, but when they come back out to Coaldale, and are in the same environments, it's not a practice that they would follow in wearing a mask here. I had a discussion or conversation with one of our business owners in Coaldale, who happens to have one of the largest businesses here, and they did have a COVID case on their premises. So that business followed all the protocols and all the requirements that AHS requires. And after an AHS review, they were found to be in full compliance and eventually were approved to resume business. And that is a great example of how our businesses in Coaldale, and whether you're a member of the chamber or not, really are taking this attitude towards this situation very, very seriously and very responsibly. And I want to applaud all the businesses in Coaldale for taking those matters into account, and supplying hand sanitizer and masks where possible. And so I really truly applaud them. In October, Council received a considerable amount of correspondence saying no to the bylaw. And Council respected that opinion, and to that, I would have expected that people would follow suit and feel that Council has been listening, and that we are here to serve, but that the people wouldn't just take that no to a mask bylaw flippantly, that each person would still take responsibility. And even now, as we speak, it doesn't stop anybody from going out to see the Night of Lights out at the Kin Shelter. I mean, they can still wear a mask, or they don't have to wear a mask, but it doesn't stop them from wearing a mask. And I would like to, I'm leaning towards a no, mainly because I would trust that our community understands the seriousness of all this, and that I don't have to implement a bylaw for them to ensure their own safety. I would think that everyone here in Coaldale really, really has the best of Coaldale in mind, and each of our neighbors, to our friends, to the people we associate with. I would even expect that our church groups have been following the protocols set out by the Chief Medical Officer of Health very, very diligently. And I really appreciate the fact that even our council here has taken a forward step and showing a great example with distancing and sanitizing and all that. Thank you, Lana, for making sure of us following those protocols. And with that, I believe that our community understands that we're here to serve, and that if each of us are to take responsible actions accordingly, that it wouldn't be necessary to implement a bylaw and have some enforcement. But I want to thank Clayton and your group and Cam for reaching out and helping out with the education. And I think that regardless of this, what the outcomes of this decision tonight, that education will continue to be a top priority with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to rebut a little bit of what Councillor Simpson has to say. You state that you're going to follow Dr. Hinshaw's recommendations, and I totally agree with that. Every day, she states in her reports, social distancing is important. Do it. Wash your hands multiple times a day. Wear a mask. She says that at every single one of her statements. Why do we not have a mask bylaw across the province? Had nothing to do with Dr. Hinshaw. That is a political decision. If it was her decision, if it wasn't her decision, why do we have a mask bylaw stipulated must have it in Calgary and Edmonton? Because politically, those are the two areas that you can make the most miles out of, because they know that masks work. So darn it, let's have masks in the most explosive areas that we have. That to me says Dr. Hinshaw said, masks work. So we're going to do it in the areas we have to. We don't have them at the rest of the province. Why? Because politically it wasn't sound statement. It had nothing to do with science. It had strictly to do with political. How can our premier stand in front of people and say, well, one of my MLAs from Northern Alberta said, gee, would my guy go to jail or have to pay a fine because he doesn't wear a mask going to his dairy barn? That to me says it's political. It had nothing to do with science. So Dr. Hinshaw is correct. Social distance, wash your hands, and wear a mask. With that, I'd like to move that we pass bylaw, approve temporary face covering bylaw 789R 1020.
Numbered the same, I think, Roger, so, no, they're not? Oh, 1020, okay, sorry. Okay, so before I just want to, there was, and, you know, just to stimulate a little bit of discussion, there was a question and answer sheet from the Chief Medical Officer of Health for a municipality briefing of November 25th that was circulated to council, and some of our administration people were there, and they shared this, and there was a section about masking on that. I just had it here, and then oh man, okay. Okay, so yeah, it says that masks, they go on where they're mandatory in Calgary and whatnot. It's a long list of things, but the last kind of paragraph that is in this municipality report from the Chief Medical Officer of Health dated November 25th that isn't part of our package but was emailed out to us earlier in the week is, it says, general mask use is recommended but not required for communities outside of the Edmonton and Calgary areas with the exception of worship services in enhanced status areas. So it's, but, you know, and I agree with Councillor Holm that, you know, a lot of the times when the Chief Medical Officer does her daily briefing, they do reiterate those three strong tenets of public safety, of social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing. So I just read this out not to do anything to embarrass or whatnot, but it's just to illuminate the fact that there is so much information on both sides, and it's not just so that people can understand that this isn't just a black and white issue. It's, you know, it's very foggy out there with you know, all the information that comes out. And you know, in one of my other conversations, you know, it was one of the things that I find a little hard about all this stuff is that, like you say, we've gotten a multitude of emails from people saying, oh boy, Coaldale, you rock because you don't have a mask bylaw, and we come and shop there. And that seems to be really bode well for economic activity. But then in the back of your mind, you have to ask the question, or I do, is that a good thing that people are kind of fleeing a mask jurisdiction and going to a no mask jurisdiction? You know, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, really. But it is something that's caused by this patchwork quilt that is out there. You know, that people have that autonomy, that they can go and use the power of their dollar and support different jurisdictions and whatnot. But you know, I'm not, you know, like, I agree, you know, free enterprise is awesome and free will is great and that, but you know, like, you know, that is one aspect of the whole conversation that kind of troubles me the most, is that people are willing to travel to go to, you know, and I know that the other side of it is also being said, you know, that some people are, like, I think, you know, they go from our municipality to Lethbridge where there is a mask bylaw as well. So it is a really not a very good situation for Alberta to be in with this diverse patchwork of stuff. So Councillor Holm has the motion for the bylaw, and it's the one that contains the education and enforcement is the one that your option number one, is that right? Okay. All right. Is there any, Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I totally agree. I think this is a really gray area. I think this is a hard one to make, but she has many recommendations, and I don't know why only a mask bylaw would come in. If we're going to follow exactly what she says and make a bylaw about everything, then it would also be about the hand washing. It would also be about the 6 feet distance. So where, as a municipality, do we draw the line? Are we only doing it because other municipalities have done it? But I have seen anger and hurt and unkindness. The one thing I would like to come out of this is kindness throughout humanity. That is not coming out from any mask bylaw. I am not a doctor, and I'm not even close to being educated in that way. So my thought is always to leave it up to the person in Alberta that's in charge. I don't agree that it's completely a political decision. I think every decision the Alberta government makes is a political decision because that's the job they're in. But I think if she said enough is enough, this is what we need to do, I think it would have happened. I think they're taking a step to see if it could happen. And I want to say that we need to trust those people educated in that field that are willing to give us that information too. And I'm going to follow her guidelines because I am not educated in this field. And I believe she is very well educated in this field and very up to date, more than we even have a clue of.
Councillor Chapman and Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Worship, and maybe a question through to either the Councillor Holm or to Clayton, if I could ask. Your definition of temporary, would you consider like a 30-day temporary measure to be reviewed at next council meeting in January? And the second part to that is, I'll just go with that one for right now.
Yeah, currently the date still on there is December 31st to be reviewed at the first meeting after December 31st. So it'll be the first meeting in January.
Were you up?
I guess it's okay for wearing a mask in the grocery store for half an hour or whatever, but what concerns me is our kids in school sitting there for 5, 6 hours with that mask on. People that have to work 8 hours wearing that. That's what really concerns me, the side effects and how it affects a lot of their health issues.
Avery, and then Councillor, well, I'll speak before Councillor Chapman again.
Thank you, Worship. So just a question for Clayton. So with this and the enforcement, again, I don't see how we've got the ability to enforce it. Have we spoken with the RCMP, being that, you know, there is no other mechanism for enforcement? I don't want to put it on store owners.
Yeah, I see the enforcement as being an extremely difficult piece right now. And that's partially the recommendation for the reason of the bylaw with excluding the enforcement piece and only the education piece. I just see the enforcement as being a difficult piece right now.
Okay, thanks. And then just another point that with the schools, we don't have jurisdiction there. The school division sets their COVID policy, which puts the masks on the kids from grade 3 up, I believe, and then Green Acres Foundation has it for their staff. The healthcare center has it for their staff. So those facilities have their own COVID policy that they follow, and our bylaw wouldn't supersede what Palliser is doing and or Green Acres Foundation.
I want to ask about the 1220 bylaw with the just education piece. That my interpretation of that bylaw is that it's a bylaw and it's an education piece only, but then it does give the council the latitude to down, you know, if things keep escalating and compliance isn't improving or becoming a problem, that council can easily jump in and add enforcement and of fine revenue if that was the case. Is that how I'm reading it?
Yes, absolutely, and that there is a section in that one specifically that does say if council so chooses in the future, if they, you guys wish to implement enforcement piece to that it could be added to that bylaw.
So, you know, that I'll just finish off by saying I would support that bylaw over the enforcement bylaw because, you know, given back to what Clayton has said, and then also my interaction with Bow Island and other jurisdictions that don't have masks, that the enforcement piece is the one major element that gives them pause to bringing in a mask bylaw. So I would support the education piece only, and then Councillor Chapman has the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. My question is regarding the education side, and maybe just as an aside to Mayor's comments about the education, I believe the MD of Tabor's bylaw has stricken out the enforcement component to it. So I guess my question to you, Clayton, would be the education side and your capacity to build that campaign and how you would deliver. So if the first motion passes, then that'll be one thing. But if it fails, I think there'd be a determination to look at an educational component.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our education would continue. Again, we're trying to hit various types of mediums for delivery, whether it's social media, newspaper, signs around town, again, the letter piece to the businesses, stuff like that, to reach a variety of different people that might not just follow one or the other. So that would definitely continue on regardless of bylaw implementation or no implementation. We'll keep pushing out the stuff that comes from the Chief Medical Officer of Health as we have over the last bit. But that would also, you know, if a bylaw were to be implemented, that would also be focused on that aspect too of educating the people about that bylaw, again, throughout our various ways of communication.
Councillor Holm to close out debate on his
Okay,
motion.
just for one quick clarification, Tabor's does have a $100 fine.
I
That
believe
is what
the
was
town,
passed?
yes, the town and the MD did not, if I remember correctly.
Yes, so the town does have the fine available. I think the wording is very clear in bylaw 789R10-20, which says that it's for education and enforcement. I believe this would be no different than our snow removal bylaw. It'd be no different than some of our animal bylaws. We have an education component in those. We also have a fine component in those. I'm not sure when the last time we actually wrote a ticket to somebody in the town of Coaldale for not shoveling their sidewalk. But I do know that our CPOs do an excellent job of knocking on doors saying, please, could you please comply with this? Because if you don't, then we're going to have to enforce it. The second reason why I'm very in favor of the one with the fine in there is because we're only going to meet one more time between now and when we have to renew this bylaw in January. So basically what we're saying is if people don't comply with the bylaw and people just snub their nose at it and don't abide by it, we are not giving our law enforcement or CPOs or RCMP or anybody else the ability to step up and say, excuse me, but this business says you have to have, and the town says you have to have a mask on. Put it on, please. And if you don't, we have the opportunity to fine you. If we have to wait until January to enact something that we're doing today, why would we do that? Why would we not give our officers the opportunity to do it if it's required right now? They don't have to do it. They haven't done it for snow removal. They haven't done it with other things because they're really good at their job. Give them the full power to do their job right. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question for Clayton. Just to verify, I was asked this question. So with day home providers right now, with this bylaw, it would exactly stay the same, exactly what, that they don't, they're not required to wear.
Yeah, and that would be within the exemptions. Again, there's age limits. You know, anybody under the age of 2 years old doesn't need a mask. So, you know, if there is anybody in that age limit in there as well. But yeah, again, you know, as Councillor Avery stated, the school divisions, the places that have those regulations set out already would continue following their normal practices.
All right. Can one other question? When you say 2 years is exempt in that, is there a sign, like, what's the reasoning? It seems awful young. Like, I can just imagine people fighting with 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, and it seems like that's a little bit young, but, you know, I just wanted to know if what's that based on?
That was mainly based on the other bylaws that we've seen implemented in other municipalities.
All right, we have the motion by Councillor Holm. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And opposed? Okay. Councillor Lloyd?
Motion to go with number 3 option. Council decline both temporary face masking bylaws.
And we have Councillor Lloyd with option number 3 to decline both. So, being the stubborn one I am, I'm still a fan of option number 2. So, any discussion on Councillor Lloyd's motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And we have 2 in favor and opposed. Okay. Councillor Chapman.
Worship, I'm not too sure if we need a motion, but I would like to ask that we continue with our campaign on education, as there was, I believe, in the previous motion that was done in October.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. I'll wait till you have a vote on that motion, because I would like to recommend option 2 as a motion.
So Councillor Chapman, was that a motion or a comment?
It on record.
All right, so Councillor Avery.
To make a motion that we, council approves the recommended motion from our emergency management team, which is council approves the temporary face bylaw 796R-12-20 to exclude the ability for enforcement.
Any discussion? Councillor Chapman.
Worship, just confirmation again is that the temporary measure will be December 31st?
Yeah, that's correct.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question about that. Then what are businesses supposed to do if we have a temporary face bylaw with no enforcement? What if I decide not to wear a mask that day and I come in?
I think that would again come back to the education piece. Again, we'll do our best to ensure that the public is educated as best as we can. And I think it would come back to that business to again educate as much as possible, knowing that at the end of the day they can provide us their feedback on it. And if the need arises, we could come back to council and ask for the enforcement piece if needed.
Okay, so any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, okay, we have 4 and opposed. 3. Okay. I have a strong sense that we're not going to get unanimous consent tonight. So, anyway, does anybody want to sponsor a second reading, or Councillor Holm? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, 3 opposed. All right. Pardon me? Well, Councillor Lloyd, Chapman, and Simpson. All right. Does anybody want to take a run at unanimous consent? Okay, Councillor Avery moves for unanimous consent. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And opposed? Lloyd, Chapman, and Simpson. Okay. All right. Councillor Holm.
Worship, I would like to propose that we have another special meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. to look at third reading of this bylaw.
Okay, we have you're making a motion? Okay. Okay, I just have to say that tomorrow I'm out of town. I have to take my wife to a doctor appointment in Calgary, so I'm not sure when I can get back on that, but.
Committee that I sit on meeting tomorrow night, so.
Would Monday night work? Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Holm to have a special council meeting Monday night coming up. I don't know, whatever date that is. December 7th?
As long as we do it at 6 o'clock or later, that would work for me.
Sure, 6 o'clock, it should be, won't take long, I guess. Councillor Avery?
Later tomorrow evening, to get it done with before the weekend, or will we have full council if we went at 8 o'clock? It's not going to be a long meeting, because we only have to do one reading of the bylaw.
So I would be able to be here by 8.
I can give it a yeoman's try. I'm pretty sure I can be. But.
Thursday, 8 p.m.?
Okay. And, you know, like, for those that their schedules can't make it, I mean, as long as we have the majority of council here, that's all you need, I guess. So we have Councillor Holmes' motion for a special meeting of council tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that's 6 in favor and opposed. Councillor Lloyd? There. Okay, well, thank you again, everybody, for coming out, and I'll allow one more motion for the evening. Adjournment. Who cares? Councillor Holm moves for adjournment. All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously.